Phil Porter, a Californian-based artist, creates with every piece of his soul. From textile art and graphic design to dance, and of course, polymer clay, his work is known for bold color choices, playful surfaces, and a fearless drive to push boundaries. In this episode of the Polymer Week podcast, we explore Phil's story, his early experiments with polymer clay, and the deep curiosity that continues to fuel his artwork. Hello, Phil.
Hello.
Hello. I am so happy to meet you for the first time, actually, face-to-face,
Yes.
personally.
Yeah.
We spoke many times on Zoom and online, and I am curious about your journey. Was it okay to coming to the Czech Republic?
Yeah, it was fun. It was a little adventure. Mostly it was pretty easy. The one spot was getting from the metro to the train platform. So
But you managed,
I managed, yes.
and you are here.
And I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm glad I came in early. It was good.
Yeah.
That was a good idea.
I'm happy to have you here earlier as well, so we can talk about you and give you space to share your story, because your artwork in polymer clay has been incredible. But you showed me, and I realized that there is much more than just polymer clay in your world.
Yeah.
And you created an incredible platform. You've been, in many different projects which I had zero idea about. So can you tell us a bit about what else is there next to polymer clay in your life?
At the moment, polymer clay is a big part of it because I retired about a year and a half ago. But I, with my colleague Cynthia Winton-Henry, we created a technique and a practice and a philosophy called InterPlay, which is arts-based, it's improvisational, combines movement and storytelling and voice. We're both dancers, so we kind of came out of that world, but we were also really interested in helping people learn about how their bodies worked. And in our system, we think of body, mind, heart, spirit as being one big thing. So we've been on this 40-year journey of dancing together and playing together, and created this thing that spread to other parts of the world. So I stepped back from my kind of administrative role. I'm still doing some interplay. And then, that's part of what I've been doing. But I've also, once I kind of figured out that I was going to take the art track, which was really not until graduate school, I had this choice to make. Am I going to go in the direction of education, or am I going to go in the direction of art? And one of my professors, I went to Indiana University, and one of my textile professors said, you should go to Berkeley and study with Ed Rosbach, who was textile artist, who was teaching at the University of California at Berkeley. And so I did. I grew up in the Midwest in Indiana. And that was really the thing that set me on the whole kind of journey of kind of figuring out what I was supposed to be doing as an artist, but essentially trained as a textile artist and a graphic designer. So I've also done textile artwork and graphic design.
How long have you been dedicated to the textile? Has it been for decades or years?
I really started before I went to California. So, and it was probably even before that, there was something that was just attracted to me about textiles. I love the color and texture, and also the textile. This was when textile as an art medium was just kind of coming into its own. And I was really taken by kind of the abstract quality of it. I didn't think of myself as an artist because I didn't draw or paint. That was my definition of what an artist was. And I didn't really do those things, but I found these other media where it was really more about color and form, and that's what attracted me.
Well, if I may ask, if you do not draw or, design in that way, how can you design and work with textiles? Are there any other mechanism that you can use?
Not really. Not the sort of stuff that I was doing. It's really about getting right into the material.
Yeah.
You know, I was weaving, I was silkscreen printing on fabric, I was dyeing fiber.
So more like a graphic design on or surface treatments of the textile itself. That has a lot of connection to clay.
It does.
Yeah.
And that's really, the dyeing process was really where I got all of my color information. That I feel like because when the way I was doing it, at least other people did it differently, but I was doing all my colors from kind of the basic primaries of dye, and that's where I really learned about mixing colors. So that was very helpful.
And then when the polymer clay came to your life?
It was not until much later. I was, for a while, I was buying beads and stringing them. And I started to see polymer beads somewhere or another. I don't remember where. And so I got some polymer and I made some stuff, and it was really awful.
Everyone says that, right?
Because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I dropped it. And then it started to reappear again, probably on Pinterest, which is, well, that's another story. Like, Pinterest is dangerous.
Yeah.
But I started seeing stuff, and again, was just so attracted by the color of it. So about that time, I saw a one-day workshop, polymer clay workshop, being offered they used to have these big bead and button conventions, something. I'd never heard of them. But there was this one-day event, and it was right down the street from where I live in downtown Oakland. And it turned out it was Sarah Shriver. And of course, I knew nothing about Sarah Shriver when I took the class, but it was really fun. It was a great day. So
you got the big name for the baking.
Yeah. And at the end of the class, I said to her, if there's ever a time when you might be doing kind of the next step after this one day thing, I'd be really interested in it. And I don't know if she had been doing a lot of teaching she's got a little studio in her backyard, which is right across the bay from where I live, about a half an hour. And she did offer some things. And so I went over there and took probably three or four classes from her. And the last one I signed up for, her studio was small, so it would only be 5 or 6 people at the most. But this weekend, only 2 people signed up. But she decided to do it anyway. So I went the first day, and the second day, the other person didn't come.
So you got
it was just me and Sarah. And of course, again, at that point, I realized it was a wonderful opportunity. I didn't realize what a big deal it was. And at the end of that, or sometime after that, I just said to her, how would it be if I came over and spent the day, and I could work and you could work, and if I had questions, you could answer, and I paid her for it, and it was fabulous. It was just so much fun, and I learned so much from her. That was how it started, and very quickly I kind of ended up in the deep end of the pool. I don't remember kind of how that all happened, but it was kind of like boom, 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 splash.
It's so interesting that one decision, when you ask for more at the very first event with Sarah, led to so many different things in your life. Yeah, and I guess so many new people and opportunities, and also artworks that you've created since then. So the color must have played a huge role in your life, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to the textiles, you talk about the dyes and everything. Now, when you work with clay mainly, how did that transform? And perhaps has your approach changed a bit or not at all?
My approach to color? Well, polymer is different, but just the mixing process is very similar. So, and the color is, I think, has been one of my big motivators in a lot of the stuff that I do. So polymer was just great for that it came in a lot of colors. You could mix a lot of colors. It was like endless possibilities. So, it's different, obviously, in a lot of ways, and I've had to learn a lot about how the material works. But I've been, I've only been doing this for, I don't know if it's 7 years now. I don't think it's even that long. But I've been doing it a lot. I'm spending a lot of time, and especially now that I've retired, it's really...
So can you let us know, how does your day look like?
Yeah, By the end of the day, I will have spent 3 to 5 hours doing polymer clay, and it's usually kind of broken up in times. But it's one of the main things I'm doing
That's so
at
nice.
this point. It's really great.
I am actually quite envious of that.
Yeah, it's
Really lovely.
it's really nice to have the freedom and the space to do it. I mean, I was doing a lot even while I was still working, but now that I'm retired, it's even easier.
Yeah. Well, what is your approach to working with the clay? Because some artists prefer to get some ideas out on the paper, start with sketches, perhaps they do samples, prototypes, and somebody prefers to just jump into it and create what's just going on and go with the flow. So how is it for you?
I think I do a lot of imagining, so I'm just working in my head. I do sometimes use tools. I don't draw a lot. I do use the computer quite a bit for more structural things, like designing shapes for beads and using templates and that sort of thing. And there have been times when I've done more designing on the computer, but there are just enough differences between the way things work on the computer and the way the polymer works that I kind of dance back and forth between kind of what I'm imagining, what I might have done before. Like I've sometimes said that I don't think I've had any big ideas, but I've had a lot of little ideas that have added up to big ideas. So my approach is pretty incremental, building off of what I've been doing. And some of those things, I'm a big believer in, kind of getting my hands on the clay and seeing what happens and knowing how to follow the lead of the clay, of what's happening.
Yeah.
Some things that I can't imagine,
Yeah, I really have to say that your pieces that are more rough, may I say rough, like not as precise as usually artwork from polymer clay tends to be, especially those sheets of colors that you just created and you see what's happening and you just decide, okay, this is enough, or am I continuing more? That's really inspiring, because that approach, I feel like that we are losing that a bit. That's more that artistic approach where you just experiment and see, and you stop somewhere and you're happy about it. And it seems like usually the approach is quite the opposite. Like you are trying to reach the perfection, and perhaps that doesn't have to be the goal. So how did you end up, experimenting and let it be in that bold or rough style?
Because so much of my work, I'm literally a professional improviser. And that's taught me a lot about how you can wander down the road, like you're headed down the road, but you don't know exactly where it's going or what might emerge. Because I've done that a lot in my life, I find it easy to do or possible with the polymer too. So, I think that's part of it, is just that I've learned a lot over the years about how ideas emerge, and even things that I can't imagine. And it is an interesting process. Who was I talking with? Another polymer artist who was talking about how hard it was for her. She was trying to do this kind of mix, no mix thing that I've been playing with, where you're putting a lot of colors into the pasta machine, and you just keep working with it to see what emerges. And she found that frightening. And I just think, well, this is fun. And look, my biggest challenge at the moment is, Len, what do you do with it? That's
always the question, right? Like you have this slab or a veneer, and then, okay, so what now? What shall I be with it?
But I've been working with this basic idea of, so often in polymer clay, we have a situation where we might be just putting a solid color, and why not make that not a solid color? And it doesn't have to have a lot of whatever in it, but...
What comes to my mind about it is that perhaps we shall even put some photos into the video so people can imagine. But I feel like that technique where you just put it into the machine and you see what happens and you look at it from the artistic point of view, as you do. We are kind of going at the beginning because that was how we started, and we just put colors into it and we were like, look, it's so beautiful. And then you realize, okay, there is whole world, and what I've just done is the very, very, very basic that every single children could do. And suddenly you change the approach and you try to look at it from the artistic point of view, and that's really inspiring because it feels like we are going more to the artistic way as you would do with other mediums than just clay. And I really appreciate that you do that, because it also needs to be brave a bit. Like you just put it out and you say, okay, this is what I've done, and it has a certain meaning, but others could see it as something they tried on the very first day, right?
Wait, he didn't mix all that color. He didn't do a very good job at mixing that color.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and like I said, I don't always know exactly what to do with it, but it, for me, it has the satisfaction of abstract art, and it's really taking advantage of some of the qualities of the material that polymer clay wants to mix, but it doesn't have to mix. And it's also really good at kind of holding its own in terms of the color. So why not take advantage of that? And so it's still kind of a big exploration, but it's really fun.
Yeah, it's true that when comparing that mixing process with other mediums, they do not work that well when, mixing and blending colors in that way. So that's really fascinating that you just take that characteristic and you let it stand out in that way. But when it comes to your three-dimensional artworks, what is the approach there? Because you go quite big and you create beautiful forms, and the 3D aspect of that, it's quite challenging, I assume. And you're not staying flat, you just go big with that way. So have you been enjoying creating 3D works?
I have been. Because I've started relatively recently and really needed to learn technique, I've taken a lot of workshops. It's kind of like, I'm going to follow the people whose work I really admire and see what I might learn from it. I don't necessarily want to do what they do. I mean, that's a strong impulse in me, is to be creating something that's me, and not just a kind of a knockoff of someone else's work. But I do, I am really interested in what I'm learning technically. So for example, I took a 3D vessel making class with Laura Swetnam and Leah Gordonier. That was really wonderful. And I'd also done a little bit in some of Dan Cormier's classes, making 3D vessels, and I'd done a thing with Carol Blackburn where she did a 3D vessel. So I had a bunch of technique kind of going, and then just being inspired. And actually, I did also workshop with Kathleen Dustin, and I've seen a lot of her work. Of course, was just completely inspiring. And so I just, I took the class with that first box making class, and then I thought, well, I want to make my own pattern. Is it possible to make my own pattern? So I just took that next step. And then how do I get the surfaces that I want? What's the construction like? And like I had the second thing I did, I had this little top piece, and I had a bunch of, kind of tendrils that were supposed to go here. So I put them in, they needed to be baked. So I put them in place, and I thought, well, they're gonna sag when I put it in the oven. So I built this very complicated kind of structure to support them so they would stand up. But rather than holding that shape, they all just beautifully curved over the...
But that felt like an intention, actually.
Yeah, like that was an accident. But what a wonderful thing to learn. I mean, mostly what I learned was that those were a little bit too big to do what I wanted them to do. But what ended up was really interesting and something that I might. So anyway, I'm just kind of walking down that road. And I am one of the, I'm looking for some forms that have a fair amount of territory to cover. You know, one of the challenges I find of polymer clay, of what people are making, is that, you know, it's little tiny earrings and it's just a little bit of room, and, you know, it's kind of like, oh, I want big things. So the vessels create more surface. I really like that part.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just, you know, I'm wandering down these paths.
And I think it's a great example that you said that you got inspiration here, there, and you just took a bit of every, you know, you took something here, something there, and you figure out your own way, put it together, created your own slab or pattern. And that's such a great example how to get certain education, but also not really copy what you just saw at the classes. And do you feel like that perhaps your InterPlay approach has helped in some way to get into that process, or has it been like your character, you know, from the very beginning, that you do not copy at all, but you tend to change every single thing so you can get something unique?
Well, you know, like I said before, it is one of my goals to make what I'm supposed to be making, or what I might make, or what comes out of my imagination, or just my way of working. And I don't want, you know, I'm just not interested in replicating other people's work. And I feel like the possibilities are unlimited. Like I have this really, I don't, like, you know, people talk about having blocks when they can't work. I've never really experienced that. Don't tell anyone.
Yes.
Piss them off.
I think you will have to be louder. Yeah.
No,
Maybe
I don't want anyone to know. You know, so I feel like that. Like I feel like I've got a backlog of ideas going on, and right next to that is that I want to be making work that, the sort of work that I want to be making takes more time. I have to be committed to that process, which means I have to slow down the, you know, the desire and the impulse to do other things, like, so I don't drop things. So finishing something, that's a discipline that I'm trying to.
The discipline is quite real thing, like, right? Like when being an artist, like you have to show up every single day, work on it daily, so you can get into the goal. And it's time consuming. It's not something you create within a day. It takes time.
It does. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah. Well, a couple of weeks ago, we collaborated on the article for the magazine.
Yes.
And you wrote a beautiful article about color and your approach to it. And we are having you at the Polymer Week to speak as well on the stage. So are you excited being on the stage?
I am excited.
Yeah.
It was such an honor to be asked.
Oh, well, when it comes to the theme, the Kaleidoscopes, what is going to be different there? Because can we say that Kaleidoscopes have been here for, you know, so many years. It's been invented decades ago when it comes to polymer clay, but I feel like that it's still quite mysterious, because there are definitely ways how to make them better or unique or different. So what is different when it comes to your approach to kaleidoscope canes?
You know, some of this stuff came out of a workshop I did with Jana Roberts Benson. And again, I've admired her work, and that was the class.
That's interesting, because she doesn't do that much of kaleidoscopes, right? Well, she does kaleidoscopes and organic.
She used to.
Yeah, she used to. Yeah.
But she does this she called it arabesque cane technique. And so here's what always happened to me. I would make these big canes, and Sarah does a lot of big canes. So I was doing big canes with her. So several things would happen. Number one, I would always reduce it too much. I would always end up, you know, in the process of, you've got this cane, you don't know exactly what it's going to look like, and you're trying to figure out the best design. So you're chopping off these big pieces of it just to figure out the pattern. And then by the time you figure out, oh, this is the pattern I want, you're out of clay. Yeah. So I decided, when I took her class, like, I knew that I wanted more than just kind of a circular cane, because I'm interested in covering more territory, and circles just aren't good for that. You can do things with circles, but so I needed to figure out, well, I'd already kind of figured out that squares were really good. They're easy to line up. And from there, she's working in a triangular pattern. And I immediately started to think, well, do I need to do a right triangle, which is easier to make a square, or do I do an equilateral triangle like she's doing? She's not heading towards squares generally, but So these were all the questions that I had. And how do I figure out the pattern without cutting up all of my clay? So the thing about the kaleidoscope canes, from my point of view, is not so much about whether mine look different. It's that I figured out the best way,
Yeah.
at least for me to do it,
Yeah.
where I know what shape I want to start with. I know how to duplicate the patterns on the computer. You can use the computer to figure out all the patterns. And I know which cane makes the most different patterns, which is of interest to me.
Yeah.
So like in her class, I didn't even really know, well, like how many different ways can you combine a cane? How many patterns are there? I don't even know that.
Which
So I
is
thought, well, I'm
like,
going to figure it out.
that's never-ending possibilities, right?
Well,
Or not?
it depends on how you look at it. I mean, like Sarah is the master at, she makes this big cane. She's got a very specific pattern, but then she cuts it
into,
and she, like, this is a mystery that I still don't understand, no matter why do you spend all this time making these, when you're going to squish it all up. But there are endless ways to do that. And I now know, because I've experimented with all the shapes, I know which shape is best from my point of view. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And I'm excited.
That's awesome. I'm excited as well. And also, can we say your presentation has like 150 slides or something?
You shouldn't say that, because that's scary.
Yeah, but it's very perfectly prepared. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Well, I figure, like, first of all, I don't know with this crowd whether people do kaleidoscope canes, whether they've made kaleidoscope canes.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I feel like I'm on kind of a kaleidoscope cane renaissance, like, or maybe, because I've made like 6 just in this process of from Janet's class to working on this project. And I thought, well, this has possibilities, and I know how to do it now, and I've got the best shape. I better make some stuff, so I have shirts.
It's on a shirt, yeah. Well, do you know what to do with the cane and with the veneer?
So that's, yes.
Do you? Well, that's a good reply. Yeah.
But I'm good to starting down that road. But that was one of the big questions. And I think it's a classic question in polymer clay. People make a million veneers, and they don't know what to do. What do I do with this? And because I'm committed to finishing things, I want to answer that question. So what do you make out of kaleidoscope veneers? And I had done some kind of work before where I discovered, number one, I tend to like the patterns bigger rather than smaller. So oftentimes with kaleidoscope canes, we're reducing it really small. And I noticed that I kind of liked the cane in its full size, or maybe just a little bit smaller. So I had done some experiments with that. And I experimented with, lots of times with kaleidoscope canes, people will do the whole pattern, repeat the whole pattern. And it's usually beautiful, but predictable and very symmetrical. And so I thought, well, what happens if I put some pieces together, but then I only take part of it, and an irregular part of it. So I did some experimenting with that.
Wow. When can we see that? When do you plan to prepare it and perhaps show it to the world?
Well, I do have, and this is, I do have like 7 or 8 more slides that I may add to my presentation.
Well, that's last minute.
It is.
Yeah, but I managed.
But for people to see some of the things that I've made in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I've got a necklace, and I've got several pairs of earrings, and then some pendants, and so I'm starting on that. But I'm starting to get some more ideas, and I want to try a vessel, that has the stuff on it. So I think there are things to do with it. But I don't have all the answers to that. I have all the answers to the shape of the cane.
Yeah. Well, we still have so much time. Isn't that the most fascinating thing, that, you can still explore every single thing and you are not done anytime?
Endless.
Yeah.
I think it's some, the people who invented polymer clay, it's like TikTok, it's just addictive, and people knew that from the beginning. Yeah. And they designed it that way. To vex us.
Like an intention.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Phil. It's been really inspiring to have you on the Polymer podcast. And thank you.
Great to talk with you.
Thank you.